There comes a moment in every person's life when their strength runs out, when their plans crumble, when their prayers seem unanswered, and their heart whispers, "I can't carry this anymore." Maybe you're there right now. Maybe you've done everything you can. You've tried, fought, and prayed, and still, the situation feels impossible. You've come to the end of yourself. And that, my friend, is the perfect place for God to begin. Because when you finally let go, when you stop trying to control everything, when you lift your trembling hands and say, "God, I can't, but you can," you open the door to divine power that no human effort could ever produce. I remember a story about a young man who had been searching for success his whole life. He worked day and night, chasing dreams, building, striving, climbing. But the more he achieved, the emptier he felt. One night, exhausted and broken, he sat in his car and said through tears, "God, I give up. I can't do this on my own anymore." That night didn't end with thunder or lightning. There was no angel in the sky, no miraculous sign. But something changed inside him. The weight that had crushed him lifted. Peace entered where panic once lived, because he had finally put it all in God's hands. You see, real peace doesn't come from having control. It comes from surrender. Real rest isn't found in getting everything you want. It's found in trusting the one who already knows what's best for you. We live in a world obsessed with control. Control over money, health, relationships, success. We hold on tightly, terrified of what will happen if we let go. But God never asked you to carry it all. He asked you to trust Him with it all. He didn't say, "Figure it out." He said, "Be still and know that I am God." Maybe you're fighting a battle right now. A financial storm, a relationship that's falling apart, a dream that seems to be slipping through your fingers. You lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, "God, where are you? Why won't you fix this?" But what if the reason you haven't seen the breakthrough yet is because you're still trying to be the one who brings it? When you put it in God's hands, you're saying, "Lord, I trust you more than I trust myself." You're saying, "I don't need to see the way because I know you are the way." You're saying, "Even when I don't understand, I will still believe." There's a story in the Bible of a little boy who had 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish. To the crowd of thousands, it seemed like nothing. But when he placed it in Jesus' hands, it became a miracle. That boy didn't feed 5,000. God did. But it started when someone let go of what seemed too small and trusted it to the hands of the Almighty. What's in your hands today? Is it fear? Worry? A dream that's fading? Maybe it's time to do what that little boy did. Maybe it's time to say, "God, this is all I have, but I give it to you." Because the moment you surrender what's in your hands, God begins to multiply it in His. I've met people who thought they'd lost everything. A job, a loved one, their hope. And yet somehow through tears and brokenness, they found something greater. They found that God was faithful even in the silence. That His presence was near even in the pain. That His plan was still working even when life seemed to fall apart. When life doesn't make sense, faith whispers, God's still in control. When doors close, faith says, there's a better one waiting. When the waiting gets long, faith reminds you, delay is not denial. God has a way of turning what looks like an ending into a beginning. He specializes in resurrection. not just of lives, but of dreams, hope, and purpose. You see, trusting God isn't passive. It's powerful. It's not sitting back in fear. It's standing firm in faith. It's saying, I refuse to let anxiety dictate my day. I refuse to let fear decide my future. I will rest, not because everything is perfect, but because I know the one who holds perfection in his hands, the hands of God. Think about that for a moment. Those same hands that shaped the stars, that carved out mountains, that painted the sunrise, they're the same hands that hold you. They've caught every tear you've cried. They've carried you through every valley you thought you'd never survive. And they will not fail you now. Sometimes we think means never feeling fear. But faith isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward anyway. It's trusting that God's hands are bigger than whatever you're facing. There's something beautiful that happens when you truly let go. The storm doesn't always stop immediately. The pain doesn't always vanish in a moment. But your heart changes. You start to breathe again. You begin to feel peace in the middle of chaos, because you realize it was never your job to control the wind and the waves. That's God's job. Yours is to stay in the boat and trust that He's got it. I know there are people listening who feel like everything is falling apart. You've tried prayer, you've tried patience, you've tried perseverance, and still the mountain hasn't moved. But maybe, just maybe, God isn't asking you to move the mountain. He's asking you to trust Him while you're climbing it. There's a difference between giving up and letting go. Giving up says, I quit because I don't believe it will ever work. Letting go says, I trust that God knows something I don't. One is defeat. The other is faith. You might not see the full picture now, but God does. He knows what's around the corner. He knows the right time, the right door, the right blessing. And when it comes, you'll look back and realize that every delay, every detour, every heartbreak was shaping you for what He had prepared. So, stop carrying what was never yours to carry. Stop worrying about tomorrow when God is already there. Stop replaying what went wrong when God is writing a new chapter. Tonight, as you lay your head down, I want you to take every fear, every anxiety, every unanswered question, and say these simple words: Lord, I put it in your hands. Say it until your heart believes it. Say it until peace floods your spirit. Because when you put it in His hands, you'll find strength you didn't know you had, hope that doesn't fade, and joy that nothing can steal. The same God who parted the sea, who calmed the storm, who raised the dead, that's the God who's holding your life. And if He can do all that, don't you think He can handle whatever you're facing today? So, relax, breathe, trust Him. He's got this, He's got you. Put it in God's hands and watch what happens next. There is a sacred moment in every believer's life when surrender becomes the only path forward. It's the moment when your strength runs dry, when your plans no longer work, when the weight of your own effort becomes too heavy to carry. You realize that all your striving, all your fighting, all your control has reached its limit. And in that quiet space of exhaustion, something powerful begins to happen. You discover that surrender isn't defeat. It's the invitation for God to take over. Surrender is the doorway to God's power. It's the moment when heaven's strength replaces human struggle. When we hold too tightly to our plans, we block what God is trying to do. We think that if we just push harder, think smarter, or work longer, we can fix everything ourselves. But the truth is, as long as we're trying to be the Savior, we never allow the real Savior to move. God cannot fill hands that are already full. He cannot guide someone who refuses to release control. But the moment you lift your hands and say, Lord, I give this to you, something shifts in the unseen realm. Heaven begins to move on your behalf. What was impossible in your strength becomes possible in His. There was once a farmer who faced a devastating drought. Day after day, he worked his dry land, hoping the clouds would break. He tried everything, digging new trenches, planting deeper roots, saving every drop of water he could. But the ground stayed cracked and lifeless. Finally, one night, he fell to his knees and said, God, I can't make it rain. I've done all I can. I surrender this field to you. The next morning, the sky opened up and rain poured down. Now, it wasn't the farmer's work that brought the rain. It was his surrender that opened the heavens. Sometimes, God is waiting for you to stop trying to make it happen your way, so He can show you what He can do His way. Surrender is not a passive act. It's a declaration of faith. It says, I trust that you know better than I do. I believe that your plan is greater than my understanding. It's not about sitting in defeat. It's about standing in confidence that God's hands are stronger than yours. Every time you release control, you give God permission to turn your struggle into a story of His strength. Every time you stop fighting for your own way, you make room for His way. And His way always leads to peace. Sometimes, surrender feels like losing. You may feel like you're giving up your dreams, your timing, your expectations. But in truth, you're giving them to the only one who can fulfill them perfectly. God sees the path you cannot. He knows what waits beyond the bend. While you're trying to build your future piece by piece, He already holds the blueprint of your destiny in His hands. When you surrender, you're not walking away from your purpose. You're walking into it. Think about a child holding tightly to a broken toy. The father reaches out and says, "Let me fix it." But the child clutches it harder, afraid that letting go means losing it forever. Only when the child finally releases the toy can the father take it, repair it, and return it better than before. That's what God wants to do with your life, your pain, your dreams. But as long as you're clutching it, He can't heal it. When you surrender, you're not losing control. You're placing it in the safest hands in the universe. So many of us pray for God to move, yet we never move out of His way. We want His will, but we insist it must fit our plan. We want His blessings, but we want to dictate the timeline. True surrender means trusting that even if things don't go the way you imagine, they're still going exactly as God intended. It's a deep release that says, even if I don't see the outcome, I will still trust the one who does. In surrender, fear turns into faith. Anxiety gives way to assurance. The burden lifts because you finally realize it was never yours to carry. God's strength isn't unlocked by your perfection. It's released through your dependence. He's not waiting for you to figure it out. He's waiting for you to hand it over. The moment you do, you'll sense a shift inside your spirit. A calm that no circumstance can shake. Because the same hands that hold the stars are now holding your story. Surrender isn't the end of effort. It's the beginning of divine partnership. It's where your weakness meets God's strength. where your limits become His opportunities. The power of heaven flows through the heart that says, Lord, I'm done trying to do this without you. That's when God steps in. Not because He was absent, but because you finally made room for Him to move. Real peace is one of the most misunderstood gifts in this world. People often believe that peace comes when everything finally falls into place, when the bills are paid, when the diagnosis changes, when the problem disappears. But true peace doesn't wait for circumstances to calm down. It lives within you when you trust the one who's already in control. Real peace doesn't come from control. It comes from complete trust in God's plan. It's not about getting rid of every storm. It's about learning to rest, even while the storm still rages. You can spend your whole life trying to control things. Your job, your relationships, your future, your health. But sooner or later, life will remind you that control is an illusion. No matter how strong or smart you are, there are forces you simply cannot manage on your own. When you finally accept that truth, it doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. Because the moment you stop trying to be in control of everything is the moment you allow God to take His rightful place in your life. There was once a woman who spent years worrying about her future. She planned every detail, worked tirelessly, and lived with constant anxiety about what might go wrong. One day, her plans collapsed, and everything she feared came true. But instead of being destroyed, she found peace she'd never known before. She said, I used to think peace meant keeping everything together. Now I know peace is trusting that God can hold it together when I can't. That's the kind of peace only faith can give. God never promised a life without storms. He promised His presence in the middle of them. When Jesus was asleep in the boat and the disciples panicked at the storm, they cried out, Lord, save us. We're going to die. But Jesus woke up and said, Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? He then spoke to the wind and waves, and they obeyed Him. Notice something powerful. Peace was already in the boat before the storm ever stopped. The problem wasn't the wind, it was their lack of trust. They had peace sitting right beside them and didn't realize it. That's how life often works. We think peace will come when the problem ends, but peace begins when we realize who's in the boat with us. You don't have to see how God will fix it to believe that He will. You don't have to understand the timing to trust that it's perfect. Peace isn't the absence of trouble. It's the presence of trust. The world teaches you to chase security, more money, more success, more control. But even when you get all those things, the fear doesn't go away. Because peace isn't built by what you hold, it's built by who holds you. When you trust God completely, the same storms that used to terrify you start to strengthen your faith. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start saying, God, I trust you in this. You begin to see that even the detours have divine direction, that even the delays are wrapped in purpose. There's something powerful that happens when you truly let go and trust. Your heart slows down. Your mind quiets. You stop trying to figure out every detail and simply rest in knowing that the one who formed the universe hasn't forgotten about you. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Because only when you trust the Creator can you finally stop fighting the creation. Some people spend their entire lives waiting for peace to arrive. But peace doesn't come by waiting for change. It comes by choosing trust right where you are. You might not have the answers, but you can have assurance. You might not know what's coming next, but you can know who's guiding it. Every time you say, God, I don't understand, but I trust you, the chains of anxiety start to fall. There's a quiet strength that comes from believing that God's plan is good even when it doesn't look like it. You can stand in the middle of chaos and still feel calm because you know that nothing is out of His control. Trust doesn't mean everything will go your way. It means you believe His way is better, even when it's different. When you learn to trust like that, peace becomes your default, not your reward. You stop reacting to every storm, every delay, every disappointment. You begin to live with steady confidence that God is doing something greater than you can see. The same situation that once brought panic now brings prayer. The same fear that once paralyzed you now pushes you deeper into faith. Real peace isn't fragile. It doesn't depend on good news or perfect timing. It comes from knowing that you are safe in the hands of a God who never fails. And when that truth takes root in your heart, the noise of the world fades, and the quiet voice of faith rises within you, whispering, "Be still. God's got this." There comes a point when you realize that life was never meant to be lived by your strength alone. You were never designed to carry the weight of every worry, to control every outcome, or to hold every piece together. You were meant to walk hand in hand with the one who created you, to place your burdens in His care, to rest in His promises, and to trust that even when life doesn't make sense, His plan still does. When you truly put things in God's hands, something beautiful begins to happen inside you. The tension starts to ease. The fear that once gripped your heart begins to loosen. You start to see that peace doesn't come from knowing the outcome, but from knowing the one who controls it. You begin to understand that surrender is not weakness, but wisdom. The kind that invites God's power to take over where your strength ends. So many of us spend our lives running, striving, worrying, and trying to make sense of everything. We hold on tightly to our plans because we fear what will happen if we let go. But God's hands are safer than ours could ever be. He sees the beginning and the end, the path and the purpose. The things that confuse you now are already clear in His design. The doors that close today are setting you up for the right ones to open tomorrow. And the pain that breaks you now is shaping a strength within you that will one day inspire others. When you trust Him, you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to believe that He does. The same God who placed the stars in the sky knows every detail of your story. The same God who calmed the sea can calm the storm in your soul. The same God who raised the dead can breathe new life into dreams that seem gone. That's